Chlorophyceae, they have pigments, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. The main plant body is a haploid which produces gametes. So therefore, it is called as a gametophyte. Here, sporophyte. Whenever the word sporophyte means the plant body which produces spores. Trobili will bearing the microsporophylls and microsporangia are called the male. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this revision session on first PUC Biology. I am Dr. Divya, Biology Faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So this is a continuation of the previous session, that is for chapter 3 Plant Kingdom. So in the previous session, we had discussed the synopsis of the chapter and learned some of the important MCQs under that particular chapter. So in this chapter, according to the blueprint, a main question that is for 5 marks, one 5-mark question can appear from this particular chapter. So we will be learning some of the important 5-mark question, how to write and all that. So the first question that I've put here is differentiate between Chlorophyceae and Rhodophyceae. So the question can come up, differentiate between Chlorophyceae and Phaeophyceae, differentiate between Rhodophyceae and Phaeophyceae, like that also question can be asked. So however the question is, whenever the word come differentiate, write the differences or sort the differences between, differentiate, differences, all that when it comes, you have to do 2 columns wherein one side you have to write one, that is for example here Chlorophyceae, the other column Rhodophyceae, and the sentences should be exactly the opposite of each other when you write. Say for example you say primarily fresh water, and then in this point you write it has pigment or phycoerythrin. No, when you write about its living or habitat in fresh water, this side also you have to write about its habitat only, like that you have to write the differences. So talking about Chlorophyceae, they belong to a group of green algae. Phaeophyceae, they belong to a group of red algae. Chlorophyceae, they are primarily found in fresh waters. You don't get to find them in marine waters. For example, cyanobacteria and all that, nostoc, enabedna, all that are freshwater members. But Rhodophyceae, they are primarily found in marine environment. Chlorophyceae, they have pigments, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B. Rhodophyceae, it has pigments R phycoerythrin, and this R phycoerythrin is not present in Chlorophyceae members. And the reserve food in Chlorophyceae is in the form of starch. And where are they stored? They are stored in structures called as pyronoids. But here in the NCERT textbook, in this where they are stored is not given. So we are not writing that point. Instead, we are writing reserved food is starch here. Here it is reserved food is Floridian starch. In the case of Phaeophyceae, reserve food is carbohydrate. So it's like that. Or I'll just tell it here. Chlorophyceae, they are a group of green algae. Rhodophyceae, they are a group of red algae. Phaeophyceae, they are a group of brown algae. They're primarily freshwater. These are primarily marine. Phaeophyceae, they almost live in almost all the aquatic conditions. That is how you can write. And Chlorophyceae, it includes chlorophyll A and B pigments. Phaeophyceae includes, here Rhodophyceae includes R phycoerythrin. Phaeophyceae includes fucoxanthin because fucoxanthin is not found in Chlorophyceae. So that is how you have to write. Reserve food is starch in the case of Chlorophyceae. Rhodophyceae, reserve food is in the form of Floridian starch. If they ask for Phaeophyceae, it is reserve food in the form of complex carbohydrates, that is in the form of mannitol and laminarin. And examples here for Chlorophyceae, Pyrogyra, Cara, Chlamydomonas, Volvox, Ulothrix, Chlorella. Here it is Polysiphonia, Porphyra, Gracilaria, Gelidium. So this is how there it can be fucus, all that you can write fucus and all that for Phaeophyceae member. So that is how you have to write. So here because 4 differences are there, you can include the example and make it 5 because it's a 5-mark question. So moving further, enumerate the important events in the life cycle of bryophyte. So the life cycle of bryophyte is of gametophytic and sporophytic stage, wherein the gametophyte is the most predominant stage. So you have to write both about the gametophyte and sporophyte. Either you can give it in the form of side headings. First write gametophyte, write the points under it, then give the side heading sporophyte and write the points under it. Or you can just write one by one, but let it be in the form of points. Don't write it in the form of a para. So here, The main plant body is a haploid which produces gametes. So therefore, it is called as a gametophyte. Next, in the gametophyte, what is there? Next, now you know the plant body is a gametophyte. Gametophyte means plant body producing gametes. What type of gametes? So they produce the male sex organ antheridium and they produce the female sex organ archegonium. The male sex organ now produces what? It produces anthrozoids which are biflagellate, having 2 flagella. The female sex organ, which is called as archegonium, produces what? It produces flask-shaped cup-like structure. It is a flask-shaped cup-like structure and it produces what? It produces a single egg. Here, the single egg, it is non-motile because they don't have a flagella. Now talking about the male gamete, which is the male gamete, anthrozoids. Next, what happens? Fusion has to take place. So if the fusion has to occur, the male gamete has to go and meet what? It has to meet the female gamete, right? So it has to travel. How will it travel? It will be released into the water and from the water, they will move towards or swim towards which one? Towards the archegonium. Now in the archegonium, what is there? Ova or egg is there. Then the anthrozoids, what it will do? Once it reaches the archegonium, it will fuse with the egg and it will result in what? Formation of zygote. And this zygote, will it directly undergo meiosis? No, it will not undergo meiosis. Instead, it will produce a multicellular body and that multicellular body is called what? A sporophyte. Okay. Now, the sporophyte, that is some cells of the sporophyte. So, this point if you skip also, it's okay. Not a problem. So, some cells of the sporophyte that will undergo meiosis and it will produce what? Haploid spores. That is having half number of chromosomes. And then the spores will germinate to produce what? It will produce the gametophyte. And that gametophyte again what it will produce? Male and female gamete. Like that the cycle will continue. So this is how you have to write it in point-wise. It's quite easy, right? Just imagine the humans. Same way it happens here. But in humans it is the sperm and the egg. Here it is the anthrozoids and the archegonia or the egg. So that is how you have to write. Next, moving further. Describe the salient features of pteridophytes. Now, when I say salient features, some of the peculiar characteristics is what you have to write. Don't simply generally write they live there, they live here and all that. But pick up the peculiar characters and write. Say for example, pteridophytes are the first true terrestrial plants. That's right? Why are they called the first true terrestrial plants? Because they contain xylem and phloem in them. So, they are the first true terrestrial vascular plants and unlike all the plants under the plant kingdom, pteridophytes are peculiar in their habitat because pteridophytes, you don't find them growing anywhere else in the world other than wherever the place is cool, damp and shady. That is why you find them in Western Ghats, Amazon rainforest and Western Ghats and all. You find them quite too much because they prefer cool, damp, shady places. Next, the sporophyte is the predominant stage. In bryophytes, which was the predominant stage? It was gametophyte. Remember, it can come for MCQs. Here, the sporophyte is the predominant stage in the life cycle of pteridophytes. Sporophyte is differentiated into true root, stem and leaves because bryophytes and algae, you don't find true root, stem and leaves. So, this is one peculiar characteristic of pteridophyte which you can write. Next, young leaves, this is one of the very important characteristics. They show circinate vernation. Circinate vernation means before the pteridophyte leaves, they open up, no, you can find the young leaves like this. And then the plant forms old leaves like this. So, young leaves almost every time it is in the form of circinate vernation. So, that is one of the peculiar characteristics. And the sporophyte, it bears sporangia. Where is the sporangia present? In the sporophyte. And where is the sporophyte present? In leaf-like structures. What are those leaf-like structures called? They are called sporophylls. And in some pteridophytes, these leaf-like structures get arranged in the form of clusters, and that clusters you can call it as strobila or cones. Say for example, in Selaginella equisetum and all, if you look at that, you can find cone-like structures at the tip of the plant, pteridophyte plant. That's nothing but strobilas or cones. Next, talking about the gametophyte. We finished the sporophyte, gametophyte. Of course, they'll bear the gametes. What are those gametes? What are the gamete producing structures called? Antheridia and archegonia. What is there in the antheridia and archegonia? Antheridia will produce anthrozoids. Archegonia will produce the egg. Next, what will happen? Fertilization will take place between what? Antheridia and the egg. They'll fuse to form what? Zygote. Now that zygote directly, unlike bryophytes, in bryophytes the zygote didn't directly undergo meiosis, but the zygote, what happens, that zygote got converted into sporophyte. In the sporophyte some of the cells underwent meiosis and then they produced a gametophyte, right? So that is what had happened. Here zygote will directly develop into a differentiated sporophyte, which may be homosporous or it can be heterosporous. So the spores again will develop into the new plant body. So that is what happens. So these are the salient features of pteridophytes. So here any 5 points, if you write till here also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, any one extra also it is enough. If you don't write about the fertilization process and all that also, it's fine. So these are the peculiar and they are the first vascular plants to have xylem and phloem, that also you can include. So these are the peculiar characteristics. Next question, write an account on sporophytic generation in pteridophytes. So here pteridophytes like bryophytes also have a sporophytic and a gametophytic generation, but in pteridophytes sporophytic generation is the most predominant one. In bryophytes gametophytic generation is the most predominant one. Here sporophyte, whenever the word sporophyte means the plant body which produces spores. Whenever the word gametophyte means the plant body which produces the gamete. In pteridophytes, spores are important. In bryophytes, the production of gametes are important. Remember that. Here, the spore-producing body of pteridophyte is called what? Sporophyte. And the sporophytic generation is the most predominant one. And the life cycle of typical pteridophyte, it consists of alternation of generation, wherein it will move between sporophytic and gametophytic generation. Same way, bryophytes also exhibit alternation of generation, gametophytic to sporophytic, again gametophytic to sporophytic. Here it is sporophytic, gametophytic, sporophytic, gametophytic. So the spores are produced. So now we need the spores. Spores are very important here. Where are the spores produced? They are produced in spore mother cells. That is by a process of meiosis. So the spore mother cells. So in bryophytes, what happens? The sporophytic tissue, it underwent meiosis, right? Here the spores are produced by spore mother cells, wherein some of the spore mother cells, they'll undergo a division process called as meiosis, which is reduction division to produce the spores. Now the spores are what? They are haploid in nature. So most plants produce similar spores. Such plants are called as homosporous. For example, Lycopodium. Some plants produce dissimilar spores and they are called as heterosporous. That is example Selaginella. And there are microspores. Microspores produce, now what the spores develop into? Spores are there, right? We have the microspores and the macrospores. Now the microspores will develop into the male antheridia, which is also, and the macrospore or the megaspore will develop into the female archegonia. Okay. So here, now under unfavorable conditions, what happens? These spores will not germinate. They'll remain dormant. Once the favorable condition comes, they'll germinate and they will produce into prothallus. Next, anthrozoids will fuse with the egg in the archegonia to form the zygote. It's the same. Zygote produces multicellular, well-differentiated sporophyte, which is the dominant phase of the pteridophytes. So these many points you have to write. This is about the sporophytic generation. Next question. Explain the life cycle of gymnosperms. So in gymnosperms also again here two types of spores are produced, that is microspores and megaspores, which are haploid, having half set of chromosomes. And where are these produced? They are produced in structures called as sporangia. Where is the sporangia present? Sporangia is present on sporophylls. And where is the sporophylls? Sporophylls are nothing but the leaf-like structures which are arranged spirally to look like a cone. That is strobilar or cone, just like the pteridophyte, that is in Selaginella and equisitum pteridophytes. The strobili will bearing the microsporophylls and microsporangia are called the male. Males are always smaller, okay? So it is microsporophyll, microsporangia. Female it is megasporophyll, megasporangia. So the microspores that are there will develop into what? Male gametophyte, and that male gametophyte is called what? A pollen grain. Then the development of the pollen grain, where it will take place? Inside the microsporangia. So what did we learn here? The strobili contains microsporophylls. In the microsporophylls, microsporangia are produced, which are nothing but also called as male strobili. Now in the male strobili, microspores are produced. They are nothing but the pollen grains. Now the cones bearing the megasporophylls, they produce the ovules or the megasporangia. and they are called the female strobili or the macrosporangia. Now the megaspore mother cell that is there, it will undergo division to form the megaspores, that is the pollen grains. Those pollen grains will travel and it will reach the female gametophyte that bears the archegonia or the egg. Now the pollen grain will be carried by the air currents. It will go and fuse with the archegonia and the egg. It will develop into a zygote. That zygote will develop into embryo and the ovules will develop into seeds. And these seeds are not covered, meaning they are naked. So much process will take place in the gymnosperms, which you have to write it this way. So this was about the gymnosperms. Now, next important question, write economic importance of algae. This is one of the very important questions about the sporophytic generation of pteridophytes, then gametophytic generation of bryophyte, importance of algae. All these are very, very important questions under 5 mark questions under this particular chapter. And write the differences between Phaeophyceae, Chlorophyceae, Rhodophyceae. Those are also quite important. Economic importance of algae. So algae are the primary producers of the oceans or the seas or whatever, or any marine habitat or aquatic habitat, freshwater habitats for all the animals. That is why they come under the lower food chain, and they are very, very important. And there are many marine algae which are used as food. Example, Porphyra, Laminaria and Sargassum. So this also can be included as one more point. You can make it one more point if needed. So that can be consumed as food, like large kelps and all that in Chinese cuisine and all that. It's quite famous. Next, agar, that is gelidium. There are 2 forms of algae, gelidium and gracilaria. They produce a substance called as agar, and that agar is used in laboratory for culturing of bacteria. And apart from that, since it is somewhat slimy and jelly-like, it is used for making jellies, jams, ice creams and all that. And there are some marine brown and red algae, that is the Phaeophyceae and the Rhodophyceae member. They produce some substances which are capable of holding water. They are called as hydrocolloids. And for example, algin, which is produced by brown algae, and keratin, which is got from red algae. And they are quite commercially important. And next is some of the algae, they are quite rich in proteins. So therefore, they are, say for example, unicellular algae like chlorella, spirulina, all these are very much rich in proteins, and therefore they are used in making food supplements, that is protein rich food supplements, which can be used by the astronauts during space travel. So these are the economic importance of algae. Next, describe the important characteristics of salient features of gymnosperms. So one of the most important salient feature of gymnosperm is their ovules are naked, meaning the ovules are not enclosed in any fruit-like structure, or they are not covered, therefore they are naked. Next is, they can be either medium-sized trees or they can be tall trees and shrubs also. Let's say for example, the giant sequoia, that is the redwood tree, that is the tallest gymnosperm that stands till date. And the roots are generally tap roots, and the roots especially in cycles, they are called as coralloid roots, and they have some specialized bacteria, special bacteria called cyanobacteria which are present, which help in fixing atmospheric nitrogen, which you don't find them in any other plant kingdom members. And the roots in some genera, for example in pinus, they have mycorrhiza, and mycorrhiza are also important in helping the plant to take up nutrients and all that properly. And the stems are unbranched, that is they can be unbranched in the case of cycas, and in cycas the male and female plants are separate, and some of the plants can have branched stems also, for example pinus and cedrus. And the leaves are simple or they can be compound also, and one of the main characteristic of these gymnosperm members is the leaves are leathery, spine-like and all that, to adapt to extreme environmental conditions. For that it is very important. So these are some of the important characteristics of gymnosperms. Next question, describe the salient features of bryophytes. So bryophytes, this is one important point. They are called as the amphibians of the plant kingdom because they are capable of living in soil as well as in water. That is, whenever they need to fertilize, the anthrazoids are released to the water. So that is why. And they occur in damp, humid and shaded localities. Anywhere there is a shade and enough proper amount of moisture available, you can find them growing, especially in hilly areas. And the plant body is talus-like, it is prostrate or erect, and it is attached to the substratum through what? by rhizoids. That is very important. And one of the peculiar characteristics is they do not have true roots, stem or leaves, unlike the pteridophytes. And instead they have root-like, leaf-like or stem-like structures. And the main plant body is haploid. Because why the main plant body is haploid? Because pteridophytes have sporophytic generation in dominance. So that is why. So next point, the main plant body is haploid because it can produce haploid spores and it produces gametes as well. That is the antheridia and the archegonia, and hence it is also called as a gametophyte, and the gametophytic generation is the predominant one. So these points if you write is enough for this. Next question, describe the salient features of pteridophytes. So the life cycle consists of diploid phase, which is represented by it has sporophytic phase as well as a haploid gametophytic phase. The sporophyte, it consists true roots, stems and leaves and all that is there. And the sporangia that is there, it is arranged in groups called as sorus. And the vascular tissues, xylem and phloem are present in the sporophyte. These are the first vascular plants. And the gametophyte is short-lived and it bears male and female reproductive structures, namely antheridia and archegonia. And the water is quite essential for photosynthesis. And apart from that, intermediate, they have a free living stage which is called as prothallus. That point also you can include here. So these are the salient features of pteridophytes. And also you can include the plant body, the young leaves show circinate vernation, all that you can include. Next question. Describe the salient features of algae. Algae are simple, they are thalloid, they are autotrophic, they are chlorophyll bearing in nature, and they are aquatic. They are found both in fresh and marine water, and they also you can find them in moist stone, soils and wood, and sometimes you can also find them in association with fungi that is with lichen, and also you can find them growing on some animals, for example the sloth bear. So on sloth bear also you can find them growing. And the form of algae, the form and size of algae is quite variable. They can be small to large like the kelps. So they can be variable in size. They can be microscopic unicellular forms, example chlamydomonas, or they can exist in colonies, example volvox, or they can be in filamentous form, examples Eulothrix and Spirogyra. Reproduction can be in the form of vegetative by fragmentation. Asexual reproduction can be in the form of production of spores. Sexual reproduction can be through fusion of male and female gametes. And sexual reproduction is of three types in this, that is isogamous, anisogamous and oogamous. So this is about the salient features of algae. So this is about the salient features of algae. So here for all the salient features, you can write the general characteristics also. So this was about the session wherein we learnt all the important 5 marks questions that can be probably asked for the exam under this particular topic. So I hope you understood the session well and it was quite useful. So we shall meet in the coming session discussing a new topic, that is a new chapter, and learning the important questions under it. So see you in the next session. Thank you.